Call a meeting to order. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just before introducing the first item, I would note that we have an on-table item 11, which is available at the back of the room and has been distributed to members of the council.
Looks like this.
Item 1 is minutes of the public hearing held on Monday, November 24th. Recommendations to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor O'Neill. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is minutes of the regular council meeting held on Monday, November 24th. Recommendation to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor O'Neill. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 is minutes of the inaugural council meeting held on Monday, December 1st. Recommendation to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, second by Councillor Towner. Their inaugural meeting. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is minutes of the Maillardville Commercial and Cultural Revitalization Advisory Committee meeting of Thursday, September 4th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Towner.
I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to ask this question, but in reviewing these minutes, can I ask, what is the status of the trailer park across from Mackin?
Well, that was under which item?
Sorry, under number 6,
item number 6
Revitalization
of
of Maillardville. I'm just curious. Do we have a status that we can? Anybody can give me a 30-second?
I'll ask Mr. McIntyre, Mr. Hodge, or Councillor Hodge in his stead, but Mr. McIntyre starting.
Yes, thank you, Worship, and good evening. That's the trailer park down near Mackin Park you're referring to?
Yeah, I think it's on Nelson. Or?
Not immediately aware of any anything on the go at the moment. There's not a development application in. There is the odd, you hear the odd rumor now and then that someone's looking at the property, but nothing formal that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Okay, and did the committee have any discussion about its status? I note the minutes say status. Councillor Hodge. Yeah, push a button. There you go.
Only just there was a report from staff. Committee members raised the same concerns. They were questioning what is the status just from a redevelopment standpoint. Some of the trailer pads have been vacated now, so there is obviously transition taking place there. But until the owner of the lands actually brings forward a proposal, at this point everything is up to the landowner, much as what the general manager of planning has outlined.
And ever since I was on Maillardville Revite, well, as long as I can remember, there was discussions about the future of Maillardville didn't include that current land use traditionally. That was envisioned in a lot of other ways, but not as its current land use. But I don't think there's a status change.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion is the minutes. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is fourth and final reading of Highway Dedication Cancellation Bylaw 4516. Staff recommendations that Council give fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam Highway Dedication Cancellation Bylaw 4516.
Okay, we're on item 5. The motion moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Hodge. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6 is the City of Coquitlam donation policy and giving programs. Staff recommendations to approve the donation policy, attachment 1, and direct staff to implement the proposed giving programs identified in the report dated December 1st of the Acting General Manager. We have a presentation, introductory comments by the Acting General Manager and a presentation by Ms. Hunt.
Mr. Alueva.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just have a quick number of opening comments. We do have a presentation for Council. It's about a 10-minute presentation. Certainly prepared to provide that. This initiative follows up from a report that we did bring forward at Council and Committee earlier this summer. We are looking to update our donation policy for the City of Coquitlam, and we also want to proceed with some of the components of implementing the program, updating it. We've done some best practices research on other programs, both in BC, across Canada, and outside of Canada as well. That research does give us some grounding for some of the recommendations in the report. Again, Michelle Hunt is our manager, or our director of planning and business services, and Michelle will provide the presentation. Following that, we're happy to take some questions and comments from council. Michelle?
Ms. Hunt.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Just going to give you a little bit of background on the current policy and program. As noted here, it hasn't been looked at or updated in about 17 years, and was raised as part of the 2012 Business Improvements and Outdated Rules Work Plan in 2012, and then this year was added to the business plan priorities. That was partly due because Council had been requesting a list of sort of larger amenities and projects that the community could contribute to as part of this gift program. As Mr. Alueva mentioned, we brought forward a Council and Committee report on July 28th, and since that time we had a number of written submissions and some feedback from the public regarding the direction that report took, and we've also done some additional research. So we have looked at 20 other cities in BC, across Canada, in the US, UK, and Australia. They really huge variety of different programs. Some, I think that the biggest thing is some are geared towards being memorial programs, and some are geared towards being true public amenity donation programs. And then out of that falls sort of the various options around memorial language versus, just a sort of a donation standard program. Some common themes were 10 to 15-year terms for various donated items, and the distinction between adopted versus donated amenities, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So our new policy has 3 types of programs attached to it. One is what we currently do, and that's the donation of park amenities, primarily benches and trees. As well, we've looked at cash donations and in-kind donations. We also have policies that support in-kind donation of time under our volunteer management program, as well as heritage documents, and that's covered under the archival policies. We added in the ability to adopt existing park benches. So this is a bench that's already in one of our parks that could be refurbished and adopted for a lesser fee. We've also established a 10-year term, except for trees, and I think I'll speak about that in a little bit. And just changed in the report we had in July, we had looked at really trying to get away from the memorial language, and we have now reduced the sort of that and replaced it with asking for positive tone in our messaging on the plaques. So those are the three programs that I've just mentioned. The donation program itself, so we have the policy, and then there's actually a program that supports that policy. Currently, it's fairly work intensive for both the person that wants to donate something and park staff. So so we get a phone call, ask about I'd like to donate a bench in a park, and we meet with that person, we go out, we look at various options, we talk so there's lots of back and forth. So this way we're going to have a website which has a step-by-step process. It has an online application form, it has a catalog that details the types of amenities that can be donated, and we're also going to look at having maps that actually identify, where the site for those amenities are, the ones that are available, the ones that have already been gifted. So it's going to be a much more streamlined process. We've added to the list of amenities. As I mentioned, right now the existing policy really focuses on benches and trees, so we're adding things like sport courts and playgrounds and some of those bigger amenities. And calling those legacy amenities. and just specified a 10-year term. Right now it's open. We don't have any term on the donated amenity. This is a little hard to read, but it's basically wanting to, there's three parts to it. There's donating a new amenity, there's adopting an existing one, and then there's the renewal at the end of the 10-year term, and it just outlining how that process will work for each one of those. So in the past, we have been encouraging a variety of positive messages on the plaques. Here are some examples of some current ones. Love and play every day, a true lacrosse fan, an inspiration to all. So those types of messages. The donation catalog, which we're working with corporate communications to produce, and that will be an online catalog, outlines the initial donation amount and then any renewal amount. So the donation amount includes the cost of the amenity, the installation, and in some cases, for a picnic table, for instance, that may include the concrete pad, and then the 10-year maintenance for that, which includes cleaning and that kind of thing. There are a number of amenities that we've identified which are harder to sort of price, do a lump sum price. So, for instance, a picnic shelter or the sport courts, we would have to do those on a case-by-case basis. This is just an example of some of the maps that we've been working on. So a little hard to see for the public, but it'll be color coded. So if it's green, it means it's available for donation. If it's red, it means it's already been accepted. We're going to start off mapping 5 parks: Mundy Park, Blue Mountain, Marguerite, Glen, and Como Lake. And as we are planning for new parks, so right now we've got Rochester, Lee, and Victoria Parks also on the work plan, we're going to be identifying the locations where those donated amenities could go, so that once we roll this into our ongoing planning processes, it won't be quite so onerous. But we're going to start off with these 5, and then we're going to continue going back and looking at all our existing parks and what we have in the way of amenities and what we could plan for in the future. So we're hoping to start this in early 2015. Parks, Rec and Culture are going to be administering this program, as most of the amenities are ours. Anything that comes in that isn't ours, sometimes we get donations of items for, say, the animal shelter, and of course we would pass that along to the department that handles that. And financial gifts obviously would be reviewed by finance. And I'll open it up for questions. Sorry, did that just as the mayor left?
Yeah, I guess May's going to sit down there. Yes, thank you. Great report and a great presentation. I know this has been a big issue, and when it came up in Council and Committee on July 28th, we had a discussion about it. And that ended up sparking a couple of weeks' worth of news stories, and I was kind of center stage on those. And I didn't need to be. I didn't set out to be that way. But I realized in looking at it that I reacted quite quickly against memorial benches and things like that. And it was sort of a personal prejudice of mine. But what I found out in the next 2 weeks, and talking to a lot of people and getting a lot of emails and getting a lot of phone calls and bumping into people and watching all the news coverage, is that the people of Coquitlam like the memorial benches generally. And there was just one person that I encountered that said that he felt uncomfortable sitting on a memorial bench, didn't feel like it was his. But for that one person, there was probably 100 people who loved them and thought they added to the parks. Although there was no formal, I guess all that media attention, everything wasn't part of the formal feedback or anything, I'm sure staff got the message. I had asked staff in the midst of all that controversy to provide some information to us about something that they asserted in their July 28th report, that there had been general feedback in the community suggesting that the concentration of memorial plaques at some park sites detracts from broad public enjoyment. So was there ever any ability to quantify that? I was interested in knowing about that, because I certainly didn't hear that in the first week and a half of August.
Yes, through the chair. Over and talking to our staff, so we're talking to our parks management staff, our park operations staff, our service staff in the field, and over the last 5 to 10 years, there has been anecdotal commentary from some of the public in the parks as they see the staff around. Well, how many are you going to put in here? And we didn't actually keep data in a fine sense, but we were hearing, and we do take this information we hear. Our park staff would report back to us, and there was a bit of a exploratory phase for us in thinking about this, that we wanted to make sure the publicness of the park isn't impacted, and we felt that if this was a bit of a trending area, we needed to explore that. We reported out that there was general feedback. I agree with Councillor O'Neill. His comments certainly bear something to think about. We did hear in the press and actually in a lot of emails, the public seems to want flexibility in the messaging, and we felt there was no reason not to provide that. We wanted to be in line with the Coquitlam public. I think the Coquitlam public to us has spoken that this is a right balance in how we do these donations, so we're quite comfortable. But to answer your question, there was some general commentary over many years. We just didn't want to lose track of that. Okay.
Thank you for that. And so back in July 28th committee, there was a specific suggestion that wording cannot include birth and death dates. Now, that line is out of this report, although, and I want to make sure, is that still generally going to be precluded? The devil's in the details on these things, I guess, and somebody will say, well, this is very positive, and then why are you rejecting it? And maybe you're rejecting it because it's got a birth date and a death date on it, or will that be accepted or not? I think that's one of the specific things, because I know that in your tremendous municipal scan that you had across North America, there were several places that actually don't allow that. What are we going to allow specifically, and what aren't we going to allow specifically? We should be clear.
Through the chair, we're not going to be specific about what people can and can't put on there. We have been working with people for a number of years to give them some options, to sort of make suggestions and a variety of things like this. But no, we've taken the actual language in the policy out. So it says right now that donors will be encouraged to choose plaque wording that's positive in tone and respectful. So we're not saying they can't put birth and death dates. We're not saying they can't put in memoriam or anything specific. We're just going to hope they choose, some language like what we have on the screen here.
Good. Okay. Thank you. That was important to get that clarified, because that would probably be the first sticking point. Thank you very much. And I think that's all my questions and points. Thank you very much. Good. Glad to have this come back in this form.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
I just want to thank you for doing so much great research and finding out the best practices around the world. That's fantastic. I feel so good to be able to see all that research and make a decision based on that. So thanks. My only question was about the renewal. Let's say I bought a bench 8 years ago. No, let's say 12 years ago. You'll send me a letter explaining the new policy and ask me to renew, correct? So when I bought it 12 years ago, I may have bought it with the understanding that this was going to be in perpetuity, and now I'm being told it may not be. Is that safe to assume?
Yes, we are having conversations. I mean, these benches tend to require additional, like at this point too, if it's a 12-year-old bench, it's probably not in the best of shape. And so we would ask not for the full amount, but just for the maintenance fee. So a small portion. So we're not asking, for the the full amount.
Now, do you think, though, that there might be some pushback from some families who bought this thinking that this was a one-time cost and they weren't going to have to renew?
Yes, and I think we'll be flexible. I mean, I think it would depend on the shape of the bench and how much more maintenance is going to be required, and we'll have to look at that further.
Okay.
If I can, through the chair, if I could add some commentary, and it goes back to the issue of the wording as well. Our staff have a lot of very frank discussions with residents around the state of the asset and how best to represent their past loved ones and the kind of language people like in the park and how people really relate to the park. So there's a lot of discussions around this. I think we can have those discussions. If an amenity is really in bad shape, I think we're obligated to probably replace it, and that individual, that family may have a role to play, and we would want to have them play a role as best as possible. We're going to have some individual discussions on some of the past amenities, and then moving forward, all the new amenities will be under the program. But we do expect a little bit of give and take on some of the existing amenities.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, it's not on the floor yet. So moved. Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The next item, item 7, concerns 2015 water, sewerage, drainage, and solid waste rate amendments. The staff recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Water Distribution Amending Bylaw number 4529. First, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Sewerage and Drainage System Amending Bylaw 4530. And first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Solid Waste Management Amending Bylaw 4528.
Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Asmussen. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be supporting this, even though I'm not happy with the water rates. But I was on the record 2 weeks ago speaking against the new split rate for multifamily and single-family homes. But I think it's a bigger issue, and it's more important to move ahead with this bylaw and with the new rates, because it's important for the city to get on with its business. But I do want to reiterate the fact that I am opposed to that split. Very little public consultation. What public consultation there was would have been through our online budget poll and our annual Ipsos Reid satisfaction survey tracking specific city services, and there's overwhelmingly very satisfied or somewhat satisfied, 98% with our public works, including drinking water quality and sewers. So nobody there was crying for a big change. And I think the process that led us to that split rate was a little slapdash, I think. I think it could have been a little more precise. And I think I'll just leave it at that. So not pleased with the process, but I think the bigger question is moving ahead with this. We really have to have a water rate and a bylaw. So I'll be supporting this with reservations. Let the record show.
He reserves his right to have reservations. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, I have similar concerns to Councillor O'Neill, and like Councillor O'Neill, I also did not support the shift to split the rate and to increase single-family rates while decreasing multifamily rates. I'm concerned that it's based on assumptions that are made about average use and average families, and I think that there are a lot of seniors who live singly in a home that they have lived in for maybe 50 years, and now that the family's moved out, their water consumption has gone down, and there are multifamily homes with multiple residents living in them. So I think that was what I found as a challenge. These rates are really, for a large part, a pass-through through of rates that that the GVRD through their water charges us. The other portion is, of course, the cost of us maintaining the infrastructure within the city limits, and I do recognize that after a lot of discussion that there are some additional cost to running pipes to single-family homes as opposed to running pipes between a couple of residences in a multifamily. So I appreciate where staff was coming from on this, but at the same time I wasn't happy with the original decision, but that's been made. And so moving forward, we obviously have to raise the money to pay for the water that we consume. So for that reason, I will be supporting it now. Thank you.
You, Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I'll be supporting it. I did support it on the first vote. There is a vast difference in cost for delivery of services. And although a lot of people in the Ipsos read they're happy with their delivery of services, the specific question was never asked. Do you think that multifamily homes should pay less of a cost of water than single-family homes? Because probably it isn't on a lot of folks' mind. We are not the first city to have done this. We are starting at quite a high level of change so that we can go over 5 years and trying to get it to something that looks quite equitable. The cost of delivery includes maintenance of pipes and services and things like that. So I think this is probably the fairest way to look at it. So I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. And by the same token, I look at it from the point of view of what's fairer. What's fairer? I have heard from several seniors who have moved out of their single-family homes and now find themselves in a multifamily building of, say, 100 residents and paying exactly the same for what they calculate as 25% the water consumption. And of course, less than half of our utility bill, or somewhere around half, is the water consumption. The other half is the cost of delivering the service, as Councillor Hodge mentioned. The 100 units of that apartment have perhaps share 50 meters of pipe and fittings. Those same 100 units as single-family homes would perhaps have 2 kilometers of pipes and fittings that the city has to maintain. And we have to maintain it out of the utility fees. So clearly it is much more expensive to run water service to single-family homes than it is to an apartment building. And that's recognized by so many municipalities for whom metering isn't a possibility, so we try to find some other way of finding a measure of equity. It's not going to be equitable in every circumstance. Certainly there are multifamily units that use as much water as a single-family unit, depending on the number of residents. But on average, the cost to the city of supplying water to an apartment in the tower across the street is a fraction of the cost of supplying water to my home or any single-family home in the city. That's our cost. And for us to, perpetuate the idea that multifamily should subsidize single-family in their water rates, I think is not fair. I think, no question, the survey results are, do you like your water service? Well, of course we do. Our water service is excellent. It's the best water in the world, perhaps. Do you like your sewer service? Well, it never seems to back up. That's how a measure of success from my point of view. What goes down the drain seems to stay down the drain. We don't ask them, is it fair? And if we did ask them if it was fair, I suspect we'd end up with a percentage that live in single family not wanting to change, not wanting to have this move to more equitable, and we would pit resident against resident. So I don't think that a public consultation is going to produce necessarily the great results that we'd be hoping for. In the end, the question was, as I started, is this fair or is this fairer than the current system? And I believe this is fairer. It's moving in the right direction, and I'll be supporting it. Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you, Mayor. I voted against the change. I do think you can't base it on water consumption, but I think you can base a difference on the hard costs of replacing pipes and stuff like that on a difference. I do think, though, the consultation or the explanation to the public out there is not what it should have been prior to the vote. We should have had a greater explanation on what the costs are, what the split is, not detailed, but in a rough estimate, so the public out there, when this happened, had a better understanding of why we were making the shift. And I don't think it was well explained and presented I thank Mayor Stewart for pointing out some of the differences on the hard costs of piping between that, but water consumption between a high-rise and home, if you look at some of the high-rises, here have fountain features, water running all day. They have automatic sprinklers. A lot of homes, I don't have automatic sprinklers. So you can't go on water consumption, but if you're talking about hard costs, and there can be a justification for that, I believe there is. But I think we should have done a better job up front on the information, even after the vote, on how people were to understand why the change is happening. And I think that was where we missed and are causing some angst in the single-family area. Thank you.
And I want to apologize to Councillor O'Neill. When he said he had reservations, I didn't realize he was reserving his right to speak a second time.
You're
Go right
me.
ahead.
Just very quickly, Councillor Asmundsen's comments got me thinking that perhaps when we send out the utility bill this next year, that we can have some sort of an explanation for the change there. I know that everybody can't wait to get to their Coquitlam Now, Tri-Cities Now, rather, to read the full details of the story. But a few people might miss it, but everybody gets the utility bill, so maybe there can be a little explanation in the utility bill about why this is happening, to support what Councillor Asmundsen says and to explain Council's new policy here. I see nodding heads. Do I hear anything for the record?
Yes, for the record, we will put something in.
Thank you very much.
I think everyone was respecting the fact that you had the floor and they didn't want to interrupt. The motion is the staff recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item 8 is the 2015 Fees and Charges Bylaw. Staff recommendations that Council give first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam 2015 Fees and Charges Bylaw number 4508.
What do you... I'm sorry. Councillor O'Neill tries to suggest that the new councillors will move that motion. Councillor Towner moves, and seconded by Councillor Marsden. The fees and charges. I can't believe you got I have one question, and that actually arose out of the OB1, I think it was, from our yes, it was from the public. Thank you. from the committee meeting this afternoon. I'm on page 11 of 16 of the Schedule F.
Okay, right to it, yes. Road and permit, sidewalk.
Page 11 of 16 on Schedule F, Bylaw 4508. Road and sidewalk closure permit. And there was a discussion this afternoon about the neighborliness of construction. I had raised the question associated with the sudden and unpermitted closure of a road by a construction crew that just felt like it was easier to put the excavator in the middle of the road rather than to take out a permit to close the road. So I'm looking for the possibility that there's a third tier. I look at the fee of $50 if the application to close a road is received more than 5 business days before the proposed event, $100 if it's received less than 5 days before the proposed event, and I'm looking for a fee of $10,000 if it's not received until after the event, the road is already closed. Yeah. And I'm not suggesting we add this on the fly, but it might be worth considering. I'm looking. Oh, there. Okay, so if it's an unauthorized closure of a road for, say, more than 5 minutes, other than for emergency purposes to mitigate risk, Mr. Diozegi.
Yes, Your Worship, your message is very, very clear to us, and we will make sure that at the pre-construction meetings we will cover this item, and we will also notify the construction companies that they need this kind of permits, and failing to obtain the permit, they will face certain consequences.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to ask staff to report back on the options available to us for a fee or fine related to that. Moved by Councillor Hodge, seconded by Councillor Asmundsen. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's the amendment. The motion as amended is before us, which is the staff recommendation, fees and charges bylaw. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The next item, item 9, concerns the 2014 general local election results. Staff recommendations that council receive the report of the chief election officer that is before you for information.
Moved by council. Yeah, no, we're
let them do it. Yeah, Councillor Marsden.
Moved by Councillor Towner, second by Councillor Marsden. This is the general local election results.
From now on, Councillor Towner, look at me before you do anything.
Councillor Reid has offered to take you under her wing and protect you from the politics of the council. Any discussion on that? Any hurrahs? All in favor? Opposed? And with our congratulations, welcome aboard. Motion carries unanimously.
Next item, item 10, concerns the 2015 acting mayor schedule. Staff recommendations that council approve the 2015 acting mayor schedule and receive the 2015 council meeting schedule for information.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Towner. This doesn't have to apply to all of the motions.
That's right. Get them to work.
Yeah, they're going to earn their money. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now, by way of explanation to the public, these are dates that about a 6-week period. The entire year is divided into 6-week periods to allow councillors to share the duties of acting mayor when the mayor is not available for events. And those 6-week sections are then chosen by councillors, not appointed, not directed by the mayor or anybody else. They're chosen by individual councillors, and the schedule is all worked out among council.
Richard.
Oh, Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, there's been some publicity about the acting mayor schedule and in Vancouver, and all that publicity has centered around the quite a bit of extra pay that the acting mayors get in Vancouver. Can you explain the situation here in Coquitlam?
Yeah, I give you a nickel every time you attend an event for me. I think that's how it goes.
I don't even think it's that, is it?
No, it's not even that.
There's nothing extra, so the public should be aware.
There is nothing extra. There was a moment about 9 years ago, I believe, when council used an element of that as part of the rationalization for adjustment of councillor salaries related specific to but there is no extra pay for the 6-week period. There's simply the extra duties and quite often a bunch of extra documents to be signed and stuff.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Stewart is right. That happened before I arrived, and it's been 7 years since I've been.
There you
I
go.
just wanted to thank Councillor Reid. All councillors were able to get their first and second choice for that, except for Councillor Reid, and she kindly agreed to take her third choice, and we're very grateful.
In the heart of the summer.
Really?
We have.
Well, that's just like Councillor Reid, though. She's selfless.
And I just think it needs to be said out loud once in a while.
I think
so. We had one onward transmittal item before you. It's item 11 for the purposes of the agenda. It's the blue page that's both here and on your tables, and it concerns the 2015 Metro Vancouver Board and Committee appointments. The staff recommendations that Council approve the following appointments to the Metro Vancouver Board of Directors. That Mayor Richard Stewart be appointed a director and have 4 votes, and his alternate be Councillor May Reid. That Councillor Craig Hodge be appointed a director with 3 votes, and his alternate be Councillor Dennis Marsden. Also that the City convey to Metro Vancouver Coquitlam's interest in having the identified members of Council, following identified members of Council, be nominated for the standing committees of Metro in 2015 as set out. Aboriginal Relations Committee, Councillor Zerillo. Environment and Parks Committee, Councillor Hodge. Finance Committee, Councillor Reid. Housing Committee, Councillor Wilson. Intergovernmental Administration Committee, Mayor Stewart. Intergovernmental Administration Committee, Electoral Area Subcommittee, Councillor Reid. Intergovernmental Administration Committee, Regional Culture Subcommittee, Councillor O'Neill. Regional Planning and Agriculture Committee, Mayor Stewart. Transportation Committee, Councillor Asmundson. Utilities Committee, Mayor Stewart. Zero Waste Committee, Councillor Marsden.
Okay, and I would accept a motion to amend, to recommend to Metro Vancouver they come up with a better name for Intergovernmental Administration Committee, Electoral Area A Subcommittee. That's a silly name for a committee. Hearing none. Okay, the motion, he's read the motion out. We could have a mover. Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor O'Neill. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously.
Your Worship, that's the last formal item on this agenda.
Move adjournment?
Thank you. Councillor Asmussen moves adjournment. Councillor Hodge seconds. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We will now open the floor to any member of the audience that has any questions on tonight's agenda. Any members of the audience at all who have questions on tonight's agenda? Anybody at all? Thank you all for coming.